This is the Yay or Nay Show with Alex D. A sports show for sports fans by a sports fan. And now, here is Alex C.
All right, here we go. It is Yay or Nay Show with Alex C., a sports show for sports fans by a sports fan. We got a lot of things to get into today. Obviously, NBA action going on tonight. Today we got Brooklyn and Boston, Philadelphia, Toronto, and then, of course, we've got Chicago and Milwaukee taking place. We also had some games that took place last night. Let me read you a little bit about what the Four Letter Network has to say about the NBA playoff teams and what we've learned so far about the teams that are in the NBA playoffs. Now, the way the story reads is, while the Toronto Raptors were keying in on superstars Joel Embiid and James Harden, the Philadelphia 76ers second-year guard was showcasing why he is such an important player in their success with 38 points in a Game 1 win. If the 76ers were to make a deep playoff run, the Maxey game would be the performance that sparked it all. And, of course, they're talking about Tyrese Maxey, the guy who's pretty much generated a lot of talk among all of the sports media world. Takeaways from day 2 of the playoffs include Cameron Johnson of the Phoenix Suns. Johnson just had the finest season of his young career, putting up personal bests across the board. He became one of the top 6 man of the year contenders by averaging 12.5 points in just 26.2 minutes per game while shooting a sizzling 42.5% from the three-point line. Tyler Herro from the Miami Heat. Herro can get hot in a hurry and will be crucial to any major success the Heat have in the postseason. His ability to space the floor will create even more opportunities for Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, and other teammates. Herro already has proved he isn't afraid of the biggest stage, as he showed during the 2020 playoffs when he repeatedly hit important shots during the Heat's run to the finals. Brandon Clark from the Memphis Grizzlies. After logging only 9 minutes in last year's playoffs, Clark will need to play a major role in this series with the Minnesota if the Grizzlies want Jaren Jackson Jr. to spend a lot of time as the primary defender on All-Star center Karl Anthony Towns. Clark thrives as a role threat offensively and can guard forwards. I can't speak English today, my bad. Derek White from the Boston Celtics. So when White arrived in Boston at the trade deadline, he was precisely the player the Celtics needed, one of the league's better perimeter defenders who also is a quick decision maker offensively. And what could make or break Boston's hopes of a deep playoff run is White's three-point shooting. He shot under 31% with the Celtics after being at around 35% the previous 2 seasons. Jonathan Kuminga from the Golden State Warriors. The Warriors played 10 players by halftime in their Game 1 win against the Nuggets, and the wild thing is they probably could have played 11. Kuminga didn't see rotational minutes, but Warriors coach Steve Kerr has made it clear he is the next man up off the bench. The Warriors see Kuminga as a guy who can be a game changer. If someone on the court isn't having a good night, or they just need an extra dose of energy, the Warriors will go to the 19-year-old rookie. Grayson Allen from the Milwaukee Bucks. Opposing teams have spent so much attention defending the paint in an attempt to slow down Giannis Antetokounmpo that it often has left Allen with a ton of space to shoot from 3. And Allen entered the postseason on a heater, shooting 47.9% from beyond the arc since the All-Star break. Allen already has been at the center of controversy during Bulls-Bucks matchups this season, so it would be ironic if he could swing a game with his performance. Dorian Finney-Smith from the Dallas Mavericks. Now, Finney-Smith would have been a coveted free agent if Dallas didn't sign him to a 4-year, $55 million contract extension immediately after the trade deadline. He is predominantly known as a defender and is taking on Donovan Mitchell as his primary assignment in the first round. But Finney-Smith also has developed into a major three-point threat, converting 45.2% of his 6 attempts per game over the past 2 months. Danny Green from the Philadelphia 76ers. There's a lot of talk about this guy. With Matisse Thybulle sidelined for the games in Toronto because he isn't fully vaccinated, Green has been thrust into the starting lineup, and while the 3-time NBA champion isn't quite as spry as he used to be at age 34. He is the only two-way wing Philadelphia has on its roster, and he'll be leaned on throughout the playoffs as a result. Jordan Clarkson of the Utah Jazz. Clarkson's production and efficiency dipped this season on the heels of his 2021 Sixth Man of the Year campaign, but his scoring off the bench continues to be a critical ingredient of the Jazz's success. Utah went 16-6 when Clarkson posted at least 20 points this season. The Jazz are 5-1 when Clarkson has scored 20 or more in playoff games. Gary Trent Jr. from the Toronto Raptors. Trent averaged a career-high 18.3 points and shot 38.3% from three-point range this season, giving the Raptors a third consistent offensive weapon alongside Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam, all while being a solid defender and playing 35 minutes a night. Bones Highland of the Denver Nuggets. While Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. were out this season, the Nuggets were in desperate need of an offensive spark whenever reigning MVP Nikola Jokic rested. They got it from their first-round pick out of VCU. Highland averaged 10.1 points and 36.6% shooting from behind the arc, but he came on in March by averaging 14.3 points, 4.3 assists, and 47.6% three-point shooting. Kobe White from the Chicago Bulls. Milwaukee has allowed the most three-pointers per game in 3 of the past 4 seasons, including 2021 and 22. And if there's one Bulls player most poised to take advantage, it's Kobe White coming off the bench. White shot a career-best 38.5% from beyond the arc this season, but he has proved to be a streaky shooter in his first 3 NBA seasons. If he gets hot from 3, he could go on a run to swing a game in the series. Malik Beasley from the Minnesota Timberwolves. Beasley quietly finished 5th in the NBA in 3 points this season, shattering the Timberwolves franchise record with 240 trays. Like many players who lived behind the arc, 75% of his shot attempts were threes. Beasley ran hot and cold. He shot 40% in Minnesota wins and 35% in Minnesota losses. Bruce Brown of the Brooklyn Nets. Brown was consistent over the last 2 months of the season on both ends of the floor. While averaging close to 15 points a contest in March and April, Brown has proved he can knock down three-pointers on a regular basis, providing Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving some help when teams try to load up on him. Brown shot 41.9% from beyond the arc in March, and he has been open about how defenses still aren't respecting his shot. Trey Murphy III of the New Orleans Pelicans. Murphy's shooting is what made him attractive as a prospect when he selected with the number 17 pick in last year's draft. He has been a mainstay in the Pelicans rotation since March 7th, and during that time, he's made 43.8% of his threes on 4.3 attempts per game. Murphy can come in and score in bunches to give the Pelicans a big lift if needed. Onyeka Okongwu of the Atlanta Hawks. I hope I said that right. Okongwu will be called on to play a bigger role for the Atlanta Hawks because of the knee injury to starting center Clint Capella. John Collins' finger, foot injuries returned from a month-long absence on Sunday against the Heat, but Okongwu will shoulder starting responsibilities. In 6 games as a starter this season, Okongwu averaged 10.5 points and 7.3 rebounds. So these are the cliff notes from what we know so far in regards to the teams that are still in the NBA playoffs. The Four Letter Network wrote it up. I thought I'd throw it at you really quickly just so you guys can get an idea in regards to what everybody's talking about. Obviously, again, we got some games going on tonight. We'll get into that here in a minute. But let's flip over to Major League Baseball really quickly. The pitch clock. We've all heard about it. We knew that they were going to test it in the minors this year. And it looks like the testing, because it has went so well, they're actually going to implement the pitch clock in the major leagues starting next season. I believe it is next season. We'll read the story and clarify that, but I believe it is set to start in the 2022-2023 season. I could be wrong, but again, we'll find out here in a moment. but it is shaving roughly 20 minutes off minor league games. Now, minor league games, by the way, don't go typically as long as major league games. But again, let's read the story. We'll learn about this together. I kind of got the cliff notes of it. But again, I didn't really get a chance to read it thoroughly 100% before I started today's show. I apologize that. So let's get into this together. It says the implementation of a strict pitch clock across minor league baseball has shaved 20 minutes off game times, dramatically speeding up the pace while not having a demonstrable effect on scoring, setting the stage for Major League Baseball to implement a clock in the 2023 season. Now, over the first 132 minor league games, that included a 14-second clock with bases empty and an 18-second clock with runners on and penalties for pitchers and hitters that run afoul of it. The average game time was 2 hours and 39 minutes. A control set of 335 games run without the clock to begin the season. Games lasted an average of 2 hours and 59 minutes, around the same 3 hour and 3 minute average in 5,000 plus non-clock games during the 2021 season. More than 1/3 of the minor league games over the 3-day sample with the clock ended in less than 2 hours and 30 minutes, including one game that finished in 1 hour and 59 minutes and another in 2 hours. 27% of the games fell within the 2 hour and 30 minute mark to 2 hour and 40 minute range. Nearly 3 times the percentage of 2021. Now, only 15% of the games exceeded 3 hours compared to 52% of the games last season with no timer in place. So again, in the 2023 season, it looks like MLB is going to be implementing the pitch clock. I think it's fantastic. It's great for baseball. It's great for action. Baseball can get a little boring, with all the timeouts and pitchers walking off the mound and calling off the pitches and all that garbage that goes on. Takes too long to get from pitch to pitch. So I like this. I think it's great, and it's good for baseball. Flipping back over to the NBA really quickly, the Phoenix Suns' Devin Booker, you guys know that obviously he went out last night's game in the third quarter, and it looks like Devin will not be back for games 3 and 4. He has a mild hamstring strain. They don't have a timetable for exactly when he will be back, but he is not going to return for games 3 and 4, which take place in New Orleans. I don't know that that's going to be that big of a deal. You are playing the New Orleans Pelicans. Yes, I get it. Suns lost last night. Obviously, that was a big surprise. Nobody expected it. Nobody saw it coming. But I don't see the Suns losing to this high school team that portrays themselves as the New Orleans Pelicans, because there's no way the New Orleans Pelicans, even without Devin Booker, can beat up on the Phoenix Suns. Yes, they got lucky last night. Every David has their day against Goliath, but it's not going to happen again. Matter of fact, I would go on to venture to say I expect the Suns to win games 3 and 4, and then I would expect them to come home in Phoenix and finish off the Pelicans probably in game 5. I think last night was the gentleman's victory that you get, and I don't think it's going to get any better than that as far as the New Orleans Pelicans goes, because, again, you can only get so lucky for so long. All right, now, in a developing story, something that developed as I was getting ready to start today's show, we all know there's a lot of receivers in the NFL that have, decided they're not going to do OTAs or anything that's not mandatory while they are seeking new contracts. And then, of course, you got Kyler Murray. He's also not doing, these OTAs. He's not going to do anything because, again, he's demanding a brand new contract. And, of course, you can say whether you agree or disagree with Kyler Murray. Again, his contract's not up. He's not due a contract. Why he's in such a hurry to get one? There's a lot of guesses you could take. My guess on that is that, look, he knows he's probably going to fail again this season. And if he doesn't get the bag before he has another failure of a season, he's not going to get the bag at the end of this year. They're probably going to look to move on from him. And they very well could put the coach in the hot seat, even though, they were crazy enough to extend him to 2027. But I don't know. Maybe I should get into that. I've been teasing that I'm going to get into that. Maybe I should get into that. I don't know if I'm going to do it today. I don't know if I'm going to do it today. I'm getting close. But anyways, my point being, so Deebo Samuel has now told the 49ers he wants to be traded. Now, they have offered him a new contract. Everybody knows Deebo Samuels has asked the 49ers for a brand new contract. He's watching all these wide receivers. They're getting all these bags of money. He wants his piece of the pie. And the 49ers offered him. Now, we don't know the specifics of the contract. What we do know is Debo obviously rejected it and has now told the 49ers he wants a trade. Let's read a little bit of the story that the Four Letter Network has in regards to this. So it says, for the past few months, the 49ers have repeatedly said they'd like to keep wide receiver Debo Samuel for a long time. And then, of course, today it became clear that Samuel and the Niners don't quite see things the same way. Samuel, who was entering the final year of his rookie contract, told the Four Letter Network that he has asked the 49ers to trade him. Samuel declined to offer specific reasons for requesting the trade, but acknowledged that he has informed the team of his desire to leave. Now, that comes on the heels of what has become an increasingly turbulent relationship between the two sides following Samuel's breakout 2021 season. In recent weeks, Samuel has scrubbed any mention of the 49ers from his Instagram account, unfollowed the team, and removed most photos of him in the team's uniform from the platform. Sound kind of like something we've heard before? Kyler Murray? Look, staying with this one specifically, talking about Debo Samuel. Here's the thing about Debo. Is Debo great? No. Is Debo good? Yes. Is Debo above average? Well, as a wide receiver, he's not. Okay? Here's the thing about Debo Samuel. Debo Samuel, as a wide receiver, he's not a deep threat. He doesn't have a lot of speed. He has to be an over-the-middle guy. He's got to get you yards after the catch because he can't blow the top off of deep ends. And his route running is not the best route running in the NFL. So if Debo goes somewhere else and they don't utilize him the way that the 49ers utilize him, then it's safe to say you're not going to see the big explosive player that Debo Samuel is in the 49ers offense. So wherever he goes, and there's maybe a few other places that could kind of use him the way the 49ers do, Kansas City Chiefs, but I hardly doubt they're going to pay him the money that he wants. They've already got a high payroll. He might maybe do well. Here's the one team nobody's thought about and nobody's talked about. I believe I'm going to be the first one in the nation to bring this up. And since we know he's not going to go to an NFC team and he has to go to an AFC team, I think where Debo could do well and probably could get the contract that he's looking for, at least I believe, again, keep in mind, I'm not an insider guy, but I believe they should have the room to do this, would be the Buffalo Bills. Now, you put Debo Samuel with Josh Allen, now you really have lifted that offense a whole other level. Now you've really elevated that offense a whole other level. And I believe I am the first one in the country to mention the Buffalo Bills and Debo Samuel. I don't know why. I heard other people talking about New England. They're not going to use him the same way. And besides that, I don't think Debo could play in that cold weather, by the way. I don't think he could do it week in and week out, playing in the snow and all that once it gets into December. I don't think Debo would do well in that kind of environment, so I don't think New England would be a good fit. Obviously, though, the 49ers are going to go where they can get the best deal, the best return, the best bang for their buck if they're going to trade Debo Samuel. But for Debo himself, where the only team, and it's really the only team I see him doing well with is the Buffalo Bills. Because they're the ones probably that would use him the way that the 49ers use him. Because look at how they use Josh Allen. He's a quarterback, but you wouldn't know it. He spends more time being a running back than he does a quarterback. So I think that they would use him the way that the 49ers use him. And I think they have the personnel. I think they have the coaching staff. And I think they have everything that's needed environment-wise for Debo Samuel to be effective and to have as good of a year as he did with the 49ers. But the only thing that would hinder his ability to be successful is the fact that he's playing in Buffalo. Cold weather, December, how's he going to do in the snow? That's the only question mark. But it still, to me, is the place where he will have the maximum amount of success. Again, imagine if he would have been on the Buffalo Bills when the New England Patriots were just running the ball up the gut on Buffalo in a game that was run only. Imagine if Debo would have been on the offensive side of the ball for the Buffalo Bills. New England would have never even been in that game. Bill Belichick could have made every adjustment that he wants to make, But in that snow, in that weather, in that grit, and the fact that they were running the ball as successfully as they were against Buffalo Bills, imagine if Buffalo was able to give them a taste of their own medicine with Deebo Samuel, not only a guy who can run and who can run in cold weather because he's already proven it a few times, but a guy who could also catch the ball in cold weather as well and get yards after the catch because he's hard to bring down, and he's even harder to bring down in cold weather. So Deebo would be a neutralizing effect on somebody who tries to play the kind of games that Bill Belichick does. I think that the perfect fit for him would be Buffalo. I don't know if they got the money to do it. I believe they could. I don't know if they could. If they could, it would be a great fit for both Buffalo and Deebo Samuel. However, is Deebo Samuel worth the money that he's asking? No. Again, he's not a wide receiver who could blow the top off a defense. He's not a deep threat. He doesn't have the greatest hands. He doesn't. He's got good hands. He's got above average hands, but he doesn't have superior hands. He's not a guy you can throw a bunch of 50-50 balls and he's going to go get it over the defender. He'll get it 50% of the time, but he's not somebody who can go out there and get it 75% of the time like an elite receiver can. And again, and because the lack of speed and because of the lack of crisp route running, defenders can defend him. So he's not a threat as a wide receiver. He is a guy who, as a wide receiver / running back, can really, really, really give your offense a bunch of brand new, dimensions. And he can come out of the backfield and he can catch the ball and he can do all those things. Absolutely. But he's not a deep threat guy. He's not a guy who can blow the top off of defense, so he's not worth that kind of money. Let me put it to you this way. Deebo Samuel with the Dallas Cowboys, would he be a difference maker and add wins to the win column for Dallas? No. Deebo Samuel's in L.A. with the Rams. Would he be a great fit and do a great job with the Rams? He'd be insignificant. He'd be insignificant. With the Cowboys, by the way, let me backtrack real quick. He'll get a lot of catches. He'll get a lot of yards in between the 20s, and he'll get some touchdowns. But he'll never be the threat for Dallas that he was for San Francisco because they have running backs. And he's not a deep threat wide receiver. He's not a guy who is going to go and out-jump the secondary to get those 50-50 balls more often than not. It literally will still be a 50-50 ball if you put it up there for Deebo Samuel. I'm a 49er fan. I've watched all the games. I've seen him. He doesn't get a lot of those 50-50 balls. It's not that kind of guy. So you can plug him anywhere you want to. Tampa Bay, how would you do with Tom Brady? He'd be great with yards after the catch on short over-the-middle routes. Again, not over the top. They're not going to use him as a running back. They're not going to pay him the kind of money he wants. They've got better wide receivers that they're not paying as much money as Deebo's demanding. So I could do this all day long. And the only team that I see this working with, well, two teams, but one I know doesn't have the money, Kansas City Chiefs and Buffalo. Now, if you want to use him as a second receiver in certain instances, like maybe he'd be a good fit for Cincinnati as a number 2 receiver, but he's not looking for number 2 receiver money, and there's the problem. He'd be a great number 2 in a lot of places. Oh, make no mistake about it. He'd be a great number 2, but he's looking at number 1 money. That's the problem. He'd be a great number 2 in a whole lot of places, but he's looking for number 1 money because as a number 2, I'd put him in Cincinnati. Again, I'd throw him in Buffalo. I don't think he'd make a difference in New England, but he'd be good for New England. He'd be great with the LA Chargers, absolutely, as a number 2. He'd be great with Chicago Bears. He'd be great with the Green Bay Packers, but he's not going to the NFC. But there's a lot of teams he'd be a great number 2, but again, he's looking for number 1 money. That's the problem. So I don't know what Deebo Samuel's thinking. A lot of these players that leave San Francisco, by the way, all these 6th-round guys that leave and then they go somewhere else, and mainly I'm talking about all these running backs that have looked good with 49ers, and then all these other teams get excited, and then they yank them, and then they pay them, and then they're waiting for them to produce. Well, guess what? They're still waiting for them to produce because there is a system in place in San Francisco that makes it to where you can plug and play a 6-round running back. But these same 6-round running backs, when they go to other teams, one of them's with the Miami Dolphins right now that I can think of, he's not going to have as good of a year as he had with the San Francisco 49ers. That's just the way it works. And there's other receivers that have already left Shanahan, and where they are now, and they've already played full seasons, they haven't produced like they did when they were with the 49ers. There is a system in place with San Francisco that works. And sometimes some players are simply system players. Deebo Samuels is a system player unless he's willing to be a number 2 and he's going to have to get paid number 2 money. But he's looking for number 1 money and he's not a number 1 wide receiver. He's just not. Okay, so a lot of people were talking about Kyrie Irving, and they were talking about the anticipation of tonight's game against the Boston Celtics. And, of course, you know, everybody's still going over what happened in the last game. And you got some people still trying to defend Kyrie Irving and what he did. And, of course, it's former players. Players never want to admit that another player was wrong, regardless of whether they're from the same sport or not. That's just the way they are. And I even heard some people today talking about they didn't understand why Kyrie Irving only got a $50,000 fine. But my understanding is he got a $50,000 fine because if they would have went over $50,000, then Kyrie Irving would have been able to basically take it to arbitration to try and get them to reduce the fine, which ultimately he might have won. And if he wins, it would go back to $50,000 anyway. And he ends up paying the $50,000 fine. There are other people, however, who also ask, well, why was he not suspended? Look, the bottom line is former players could talk all the smack they want to about how, you know, they have every right to say something back to a fan and all that stuff. Again, if you want to be childish, then be childish. That's what you are. But you're not earning the respect of the 99% of fans that are watching on TV and in the arenas by acting like a child. And then by sitting there and saying, well, I grew up in an environment where my dad told me because these guys stole my basketball, he told me don't come home until I get the rock back. Okay. Well, again, and that works for some people. And these guys all, you know, they're all talking tough, like, oh, I grew up in an environment, a neighborhood, because, you know, let me go back to that story where my dad told me, don't come home until I get my basketball. And he was dead serious, so I had to go. And Lord and behold, I came home the next day and I had my basketball. Okay, that's great. That's great. And for certain people, you can do that when you grow up in a very soft neighborhood. Obviously, the person, and I'm not naming them because I'm not trying to get confrontational, but the person in national sports media who made that comment and told that story, obviously he grew up in a soft neighborhood. Because if he would have grew up in a real neighborhood and he would have really tried that from 3 bullies who took his basketball from him, he probably wouldn't have came home at all. Somebody would have been calling 911 and letting his parents know where they can go meet their kid. That's pretty much how that would really go down if he were in a real environment where, you know, stuff doesn't actually go the unicorn way that it went for him. Because apparently, you know, he was able to get his ball back from the 3 bullies, you know. And if that's true, great. But again, that's dumb advice. It's dumb. Because again, in a real neighborhood like the one I grew up in, where I have guys unloading clips in the middle of a street, shooting at a house, and then they're still unloading, and then they're reloading, and they're doing all this in broad daylight, and then they're shooting up the house all over again. In a real neighborhood like that, for this sports media guy who's talking tough about taking the basketball back from the 3 bullies, in a real neighborhood like that, the one that I grew up in, yeah. Somebody would have been calling 911 and they would have been informing his parents where they can go pick up the body. That's what would have been happening. So stupid advice to give a kid to tell something like that to. By the way, it's stupid not only for that reason, but it's also stupid because it's just a basketball. What? You couldn't replace the dang basketball? A basketball's that important that you had to go and try and fight 3 guys to get your basketball back? I mean, give me a break, dude. And then in the time that we live in, with all the changes and all the things that are going on and all these social justice causes that you are so in favor of, now you're telling people to go whack anybody that says anything to you derogatory, go after everybody, prove what a man's man you are. You're just talking drama. Because, again, in my neighborhood where I grew up in, you would have been dropped like a fly. Nobody would have heard from you, and you would have never had an NBA career. Fact, not fiction. Fact, not fiction. So stupid advice to give people that you would do that. And it also translates to the arena. Stupid advice to give to have an NBA player flipping off people and all that, and then to sit there and try and tell the story about, oh, well, you know, these parents, they have kids. Okay, and they do, and they're acting wrong, and they should be removed from the arena. And them and their kids should go through the humiliation of being removed from the arena. But nobody wants to see anybody flipping anybody off or listen to somebody cuss somebody out and all that stuff, because you're in the public eye. That's why you get paid the money you get paid, to deal with the fact that you're going to have hecklers and you're going to have people that go over the top and say things that they should not be saying. But even in doing so, because again, you guys are also the same guys that complain about politicians and how they act and the things they say, and they should never do that because they're in the public eye. And how dare this guy be a politician and be the most powerful man in America, but yet be on a microphone and saying the things that he says when he has all these people watching, because when he says something, people will listen and then they will translate it in however they want to translate it, and then something bad can happen. Well, guess what? You're in the public eye. You can say something, people can translate it the way they want to translate it, and then something bad can happen as well because you're setting the bad example. And that goes from being the NBA player to the national sports hosts that keep running their mouths and saying all these stupid things about how you should be confrontational and then being so proud of yourself because you're a man's man. Now, again, obviously, in the very soft neighborhoods that you grew up in, you were lucky and you were able to get away with it. But I'll say this, and this is where I hit the home run to all the national sports media guys, former players mainly, who keep running their mouths about how, you know, oh, I was a man's man in my neighborhood. And here's the home run I hit. Hey, if that advice works so well and be a man's man so good, how's it working out for all them kids in Chicago on a daily basis? If your advice is so great and so good, how's it working out for all them kids in Chicago? Fact, not fiction. So maybe you might want to rethink the words that come out of your mouth. How about that? So Kyrie Irving, we don't want as fans to see you act up or act a fool, grow up, man up, grow a pair, and have some people escorted out. Let them go through the humiliation. That's what we should be seeing, not the stupidity of you talking all the smack and then looking stupid, because not only are you talking all this smack and you're engaging with these fans and you're acting like you're the biggest, the baddest, and the best, and you are great in basketball, but when you act dumb like that, you make yourself look small, and then you look even dumber when you lose the game. So how about you focus on winning the game and quit worrying about the fans? Because their job is to get in your head. That's why they're there. Their whole job is to get you to not think about the game and to make you lose. And if only for one moment they get in your head, and that happens to be the biggest moment in the game, and then you fail, and some could arguably say that's what happened in game one, then the fans did their job. You should have had the ones that were getting in your head and making all the derogatory remarks thrown out. And any fan that acts like that is an idiot, and they should absolutely be thrown out. Just because I'm a fan doesn't mean I'm going to be on the side of the fans. Same way that these former players should not be on the side of players just because they're a player. So what? They're making a mistake. Confrontations is not why people watch sports. And to further go along with what I'm saying, if you listen to all of the commercials where they're talking about, you know, training and developing new coaches and all that stuff, if you listen to all those commercials that run on any radio station, and a lot of the sports radio stations obviously are running these commercials, and they run on the 4-letter network, by the way. If you listen to all these commercials, they tell you that the first responsibility for a coach is to win, but the second, but really the first obligation is to teach sportsmanship and how to win with dignity. So that goes against everything that the 4-letter network and these organizations that are building and developing the upcoming coaches, it goes against everything that they're talking about when you're talking about be confrontational. Something you might want to think about. All right, that's going to do it for today. A lot of great games coming up today. We'll talk about them tomorrow. And this is Yay or Nay Show.